Lucario.
That's not a bad name.
You're welcome. You can
It's
use that. No
like a
charge.
magician's name.
Watch me hide the salami.
Or a Giovanni's.
True.
Now we just need Scout. So how is everybody doing?
All right.
Just waiting for Robert to get waylaid on the road.
Why would you expect that?
I'm not late.
Way I see it, I got 1 minute.
Yeah, but we were all here, so therefore you're late.
Doesn't matter. Scheduled time is scheduled time.
It does.
Taking the place of Scout would be special guest Kimber.
It works. They're both Bruja.
That's true. Okay. Okay. Do we have any questions before we get back into it? Okay. We return to England following the story of Robert de Vere as he is returning with his new prisoner and once companion, Amelia, transporting her back to the castle of Salisbury and the holdings of the Covenant. Robert, you've been on the road with your men traveling. Robert, would you travel during the day or the evening as you leave from London back to Salisbury?
During the day.
During the day. Alright. You hear reports during one of these nights when you are awake. As you waken, and by the time you waken, generally the camp is already set or quickly being set up. So you wake up in new locations along the road or off to the road, and you hear one of these nights, Sergeant Sears reports to you that there have been sightings of raiders in the area. Apparently, during the day travel, they saw smoke rising from one of the hamlets, and a brief investigation revealed that there are brigands of some kind causing problems and marauding the countryside. He gives you this report because there is a belief that not far along the road there may be another raid happening much like this one, and he wishes to keep you informed, appraised of the situation, that there may be brigands nearby. Patrols have been set up to protect the camp. And right now they don't expect any problems, but they wanted to make sure that you didn't have any orders for them.
How much further ahead do they suspect the possibility of running into raiders?
About a mile, based on the last scout's report, which was about an hour ago. And this is just as you wake up.
A mile, huh? Is the scout still out there?
No, the scout returned with this report. It sounded like he came across a similar hamlet as what they'd found before, but the fires were still burning.
Praising the men, how tired did they look?
Let's see, do you have any medicine?
Medicine?
You don't have any medicine, but I'll let you make a perception alertness. Difficulty 7. Just from a general glance of being familiar with the sight of fatigue, these men do look worn from marching 16 miles in just this last day. And they're just now getting to sit down. Even Sergeant Sears seems a little bit more weary than you've seen him in the past. They're not exhausted, but certainly worn. And you're not in any immediate threat.
I assume we have a fire going on at camp.
There are several.
So it's safe to assume bandits or raiders would know we're here.
If they came looking. Sergeant Sears assures you the likelihood of them coming back to attack a camp of armed men is unlikely. Although perhaps he's saying these words because he's too tired to wish to pursue it anymore.
Robert sees no reason not to let them rest. He is curious. It's only a mile away, you say?
That's correct. It's north further up along the road, a little bit ways off, but within sight of the road.
He'll tell the sergeant that he's gone to investigate himself. And that's what Robert will do.
The sergeant does implore you to stay with the camp. He doesn't see why you're doing this and doesn't see why risk yourself. Do you try to explain anything to him, or do you just leave?
Oh, he'll let him know that he'll just look for
This is a post-game note. The recording of the next 30 or so minutes was tragically lost. In summary, Robert goes on to investigate the site of the burning hamlet on his own on foot. He finds a small hamlet burning and being sacked, with piles of the dead being stacked up and a half-dozen men in the area. He tries to sneak up further to spy on them, but he's found out, struck from behind with the blunt edge of an axe, and pushed into the open. Robert doubles back to escape, and as he doubles back, he sees the large man who struck him, holding a great axe and towering. He manages to evade the man and takes off at preternatural speed, but finds out his assailant is faster than him. Just as he's being attacked from behind by this man, Robert turns and parries the blade away. His assailant recognizes the ring of the gauntlet, and they begin talking about what the gauntlet is doing out here. This man reveals himself to be somehow connected or associated with the Anarch Rebellion, and explains he's been given instructions not to destroy the Gauntlet Lords. Robert gives up information on the hunt commencing for the Anarchs, and this man thanks him for the information, seemingly alluding to going on the hunt for these other men. They part ways, agreeing on non-interference with each other, and before they do, this man identifies himself as Jack Timbers. The next scene opens with Cormac, Elined, and Thomas on the road to Chester. Elined checks in with Gertrude to find out little has changed in Bristol in the months she's been gone. Cormac meets with the mercenaries to reinforce their loyalty and cooperation, and Thomas speaks to Cormac in private one evening when the group of them have made camp for the night, to discuss with him the idea of bringing in Elined on his secret. And this is where the scene picks up.
Here in Mescal.
I hadn't noticed. And he'll grin.
Excuse us for a moment, men. And he'll get up and step aside with Long Tom.
Thomas doesn't look like he was expecting you for Cormac to depart his seat, but he shrugs all the same. You recall Judith? I introduced you to.
How could I forget?
I wonder if it isn't time for Elined to meet her.
So soon?
We are a company unto ourselves, are we not?
I can't disagree with that.
And if we're to convince her of certain other dealings we had in mind, it might go far, dispelling any unknown associations we might have.
I'll definitely want to be there to see it.
I had thought for Judith to also join us in Chester, but we're too far on the road for that now.
It may cause quite a stir if a strange woman suddenly appears in camp.
Precisely my thinking. I don't know that we'd be able to convince the men to simply ignore it.
Not even with all my gifts could I do that. They're a bunch of horny buggers, these ones are.
Oh, I certainly could. It would be far more effort than it's worth.
A private meeting, then.
I'd thought as such.
Should we make it a lovely surprise? Invite her for a chat and you simply peel off your blouse.
You'd like that, wouldn't you? Thomas grins.
He smirks. I'd pay to see the look on her face.
Would you take me for a Godiva?
Honestly, I'm not sure what to take you for. You're still a bit of a mystery to me.
Maybe that's the way I like it.
You just tell me when and how, and we'll make it happen.
Thomas's jaw opens a bit as if he's going to say something, but it snaps shut rather quickly, and he just grins. I've too much of the sailor in me that took a wrong turn on you just now.
I assume you know I didn't mean anything bawdy.
Do I know that?
Come now, the times of my limitless libido are long past.
More's the pity then. I'm sure there's young ladies in, what was it, Cambridge? Crying you a river.
Oh, I assure you they're not. They're all dead by now.
Would that we could all be immortalized in song for the exploits we had in our younger years.
The songs about me would turn many a maid's cheeks rosy.
Some of the best songs do.
But you're evading the subject. When and where?
I thought we might draw the shutters in the carriage so as to avoid raising questions among the men.
What, now?
Now that you mention it. Now, tomorrow, a week from now.
Then let's get it over with before they wonder what we're conspiring about. And he'll nod over to the men standing behind them. And sitting in some cases.
As you say. Thomas will lead the way over towards the carriage.
I'll be back with you in 3 shakes of a goat's arse, he says to the men.
They seem to laugh. You seem to have built some good rapport with them. You're approaching the carriage, and Elined, you see them approach, and Gertrude kind of turns towards that direction as well.
Interesting. I didn't think they would be back so soon from talking to the men.
Thomas will lift a hand and call out, "Gertrude, I wonder if we might borrow your mistress a moment."
Her response is to just look towards Elined for acknowledgement.
She looks over at Gertrude, gives a small smile, and says, "It's fine."
She nods cautiously to you.
And with that, Elined will get out.
Were they in the carriage talking, or?
Yes, they were in the carriage talking.
Actually, we were going to have that conversation inside the carriage. And he'll glance again at Gertrude. Apologies.
She quietly steps out of the open door and begins walking off, holding at her shoulders as she approaches this group of men sitting around campfires.
Elined watches quite closely.
She sits down at one of the bigger rocks farther away from the fires. A few men seem to take notice, but no one's getting up yet. So you have the carriage.
I do hope this won't take too long. I'd prefer if she wasn't out there on her own for too long.
They're good lads. I'm sure she'll be fine. And if she's not, I'll know the reason why. Either way, Thomas will go ahead and mount the step and duck up into the carriage.
Cormac as well, closing the door behind.
Elined will sit back down. If she's not alright, then if it were up to me, I'd take the head of whoever did that.
And I'll bring it to you on a silver platter. I have a few, you know.
Really? I never noticed with that massive manor of yours.
They scarcely get used, but we're getting off topic.
Ah, yes, topic. And Cormac will sort of lounge back on the bench, arms crossed, just smiling like a pig in shit.
She glances over to him and then looks back to Thomas. What is he on about?
Given our close association, I thought it might be time to clear the air a bit, so to speak.
In which sense?
There's someone I think you ought to meet. Her name is Judith.
Certainly a lovely idea, but I hardly think we can meet new people during our travels. At least not in between cities.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? And Tom reaches up and very, very gingerly peels away the wheat paste beard. doing it her best not to damage it in the process.
She just stares for a long moment, and I'm sorry, what is this about? You into theatrics?
As a matter of necessity, of course. As you might also know, it's very difficult for the eldest female of a house to inherit.
She pauses for a long moment. She's going to roll a perception empathy in order to see if he's actually fucking with her or not about this.
Okay.
And Judith will go ahead and pull the tie from her hair and shake it out. And I don't know, is the handout still up there?
It is still visible to everyone.
And actually, dressed as she is currently, she looks very much like that picture.
I will let Long Tom interpret one success.
Given that Long Tom is in fact not fucking with her, the young lady's face that is now revealed from underneath the wheat paste beard is quite sincere, though there is a droll little smile there. You were right, she says at Cormac. This is a little amusing.
He's just smiling away.
But why still hide it if you're one of our kind now?
When I was turned, I still had uncles. They could have pressed their claims, and, well, House Chamberlain would no longer be mine.
It's been a while, though, hasn't it? Was waiting so long truly necessary?
At the time, the laws didn't allow for a woman to inherit anything.
You clearly haven't been to certain parts of Wales.
But well, remember that Wales is still not, well, quite part of the crown. And definitely wasn't completely absorbed at the time. Now, however, if a female heir exists, even a godchild or illegitimate bastard stands to inherit, so long as the will exists.
That is, unless more drastic circumstances are taken.
True, and I didn't see the point in killing my uncles. They were quite good to me. Or, well, to Thomas, anyway. So instead, their families have their own trade ports that return their goods to London. And they have no reason to kick up any fuss at all.
Well, at least there's a silver lining to this all. If someone does come for your head based on things that are said, you have a very easy out with this other hidden identity of yours.
And now, I have two witnesses who will testify that Judith Stone is definitely not Thomas Chamberlain, whether or not a certain Ventru Seneschal chooses to testify to the contrary.
She actually lets out a small laugh at that and says, "Do you really think that after everything they would say, they would take our word over a seneschal's?"
Two members of the Gauntlet, or an Elder Ventru.
With them having more than enough reason to throw us under the bus as of current.
The alternative is I sell it all to the worshipful company and take my chances. I still can't believe none of you thought to ask why I had ladies' gowns in my manor.
I thought they belonged to your mother or sister. It's not an unreasonable thought, is it?
As someone who worked as a former servant, it is typically not best to ask. It's best to listen in and find out.
She does, however, cast a wry gaze at Cormac. Did you still want me to strip off my blouse, though? And she
Have at it if you want.
If you two want me to leave you alone, I certainly can do that.
Cormac's grin just gets wider.
And Judith guffaws. I don't think that works quite the same way anymore.
Not the slightest stir in me waterworks, I admit.
That particular challenge is one I have no hope of overcoming.
Any road, now we know each other free of masks.
Cards on the table, as it were.
Yes, cards on the table.
Was there something else?
No, I have nothing to reveal. Nothing that I have not already said.
No, but there was a question there.
It's less of a question and more processing this entire matter.
I am an open book. And she leans back and kicks her heels up on the opposing bench.
As I mentioned before, there are no questions to be asked. It is more the thought of processing this entire information. Though you do make a rather convincing man. If you were not in your current line of work, I would suggest something related to the theater.
I've had a good deal of practice being a man. Quite a bit less practice being a lady.
Well, to be fair, most of that is being quiet, yet still being seen, being prim and proper.
You see, I'm quite bad at those things. I think I raised a bit of a stir back in Lincoln in that tavern.
Did you now?
Well, when you drink at a bar, you hitch your heel up at the rail. Has quite a different result when one is wearing a skirt.
I suppose so.
The damn thing rode up.
Yes, skirts tend to do that when you don't act the way you were supposed to when you're wearing them.
As I said, I'm quite bad at acting prim and proper.
Elined doesn't say anything. She's more sitting there in silence.
In any event, let's make sure young Gertrude is well looked after. And she'll go ahead and reaffix the beard as best she can. I wouldn't mind with a dab of water, of course. The paste does tend to dry over time.
I'd assume we have some form of water in here.
I'll say there's a bucket in there.
Alright, she'll pass that to him.
Her.
Her. It.
Definitely her, but when the beard goes back on, it can be him again. And Judith will dab a little bit of water on the inside of the beard so it will regain some of its tackiness before being reaffixed to Tom's face.
Okay. You reattach your beard as best you can.
And as he's tying his hair back up, there, better?
Well, it will certainly raise a lot less questions.
I'd had that thought as well. It's why we're doing this in private, rather than simply having a young lady join the camp halfway between Birmingham and Chester.
And the mysterious vanish of one of the people they were supposed to be escorting.
As I told Cormac, we could certainly address that, but it seemed far too much a bother.
Yes. Well then, I must go check on my ghoul.
Indeed.
And with that, she will get up, open the door to the carriage, and make her way out.
Alright.
Do
Go ahead.
keep this under your skirts, though, if you catch my meaning.
Yes, I'm aware.
As soon as you open the carriage door, you can all kind of see the nearest campfire where Gertrude was approaching. And you can see that she's sitting at the rock that she was at, and one of these mercenary men has come to join her, sitting beside her, and he has his arm kind of around her shoulder, almost capturing her, while another man is standing off to the side, looking down, laughing. And the man who's beside her sees the door open up and calls out. And you recognize this man, Cormac. You were just having a joke with him before. Hey, De Courcy, come here. This wench likes me. Why don't we share her?
Elined's going straight over. She does not look happy.
I might reconsider that, my friend.
What, do you want to join too, miss?
Oh, someone's going to die tonight.
You will
Cormac
remove
said.
your arm from her right now.
Tom already has his sword in his hand.
Alright. And he kind of pulls his arm up. He's still smiling. He's clearly drunk. He's kind of stumbling around as he shifts it away. No need to get violent, miss. Just having a laugh, right, De Courcy?
I wonder how much you enjoy being able to empty your bladder.
Now, there's no need for that, Cormac says, getting out of the carriage.
You want to see me do it? I'll empty it all over your boots. And he
Not if I
stumbles to his
relieve
feet.
you of your manhood.
And he's just kind of laughing to himself, and so is this other man beside him.
Ladies, gentlemen, let's calm our humors, shall we? Come on, lad, let's go back to the fire. I'll tell you another one of my tales.
And he's kind of bent over, laughing to himself, and he's kind of nodding. He follows after you.
Elined will lead Gertrude back to the carriage so she has a nice, safe place to sleep.
And she kind of speaks to you sidelong as the two of you are walking back to the carriage. Well, there seems not to be much difference here compared to the other men we followed into battle, is there?
No, but the last group we were traveling with was at least a lot more adamant about listening to their commander, or the commander themselves was a lot more controlling over his own men.
Yes. Wulfric and Sigfrid were certainly inspiring men. Also, I suspect these mercenaries are not the most trained or disciplined.
They don't know their place. Should this happen again, I can certainly show them their place.
She smiles and nods as she steps back up into the carriage. I would rather like to see that, I think.
Type of wicked smile goes across her face as well and says, yes, but that is one that is best saved for more limited company.
Of course, my lady. Do let me know if you need anything else this evening.
Of course. Go rest for the night.
She nods and lays down a long ways in the carriage. All right. So the group of you return, and it seems like things calm down around the camp. Cormac, you're able to fairly easily distract this inebriated man. He's very easily redirected. And the group of you eventually sleep for the coming day and continue on with your travels. Let me look at this map again. Another week passes before you get into the county of Chestershire. I might have us take an early break here so we don't start the scene in Chester and then stop it somewhere. So I have us do an early break, actually, as you're entering Chestershire. And we will come back in 15 minutes, and when we begin that scene we'll have more time for it. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have Long Tom back in the headset? Oh, good. And I will get us started again. We return following Robert and his men as they make their way north up to Salisbury. And just to confirm, that is still where you're going? This is where you're taking the men and Amelia?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You don't hear any more reports of burning hamlets. You don't have any more encounters with strangers in the night as you make your way up. And after a week passes, you have arrived back in Wiltshire. Oh, wait, did I say north or west?
Derp.
I think I've been saying north. I meant west. Heading west towards Salisbury and Wiltshire. And you arrive back in the chalk uplands that you recognize from previously coming here. Salisbury, as a reminder, is a fairly small town residing with a hilltop fort and cathedral There are only about 4,000 people, including men, women, and children. It is also known that there are strong pagan beliefs in this county, despite the attempts of Benedictines to build priories outside of the stone circles. It seems like the pagan influence is still strong. Stonehenge is among them. But for now, you are more concerned with the castle. So when you arrive, you, I assume, make your way straight to the Moat and Bailey, the castle of Salisbury.
Yes.
Okay. Alright. On the night of your arrival, Sergeant Sears helps facilitate your entrance into the city with the proper writs and documentation, and upon getting to the castle, he is very useful in explaining your purpose, needing the castle, and there seems to be some understanding of an expectation of Lord Jean-Marc and his retinue. They're somewhat familiar here, at least. And so through his help and the proper presentation of claims, you're moved into the castle, and your carriage is set within the Moat and Bailey walls. And you still have your prisoner Amelia, who is still staked, covered up, significantly wrapped around with cloth, almost like carpets. And Sergeant Sears awaits your order. You seem to have the run of the castle as you need it.
So there's no one else here?
No, there are men. There's 200 men here, a mix of men-at-arms and archers. But you've been let in because of the presentation that Sergeant Sears provided.
Okay.
It's kind of understood that you're some kind of noble lord, and so far as the average soldier is concerned, they don't need to know anymore. They'll just get out of your way and do as you say.
In that case, Robert will have his men carry Amelia. Is this the place that has tunnels leading, or where's the meeting area?
The Chamber of the Covenant is under Old Sarum, and you were vaguely given instructions to bring it back to the holdings of the Covenant. This is the
That is
castle.
what he'll do.
Sorry. This is the castle of the city of Salisbury, in the same town of Old Sarum. And from what you've kind of been hearing from Sergeant Sears, that's what his understanding was as well, was to bring this package to the castle.
Okay.
They seem to have some kind of dungeon prepared, which they've used in the past.
Then that is what Robert will go to the arrangements that were made.
Alright. One of the guards here leads you and your men, 2 men carrying this large wrapped tarp, and you proceed into the castle. As you enter, it is a bit foreboding as you go further in, especially as this man leads you down this circular stone staircase, and you reach a very dark and dank area, poorly lit with scarce torches, showing many iron and stone cells down the hall. There's a foul odor here. You see stretched men, their limbs hanging from chains that hold them up. Some places you see huddled bodies in the corners of these cells. Some of them twist their faces up slowly, and their haggard eyes meet yours. Others just lie there lifelessly. At the end of this is a space with many draconian devices. You recognize the rack, Judas Cradle, Iron Maiden, some painted with dried blood, and many incising and cutting tools set aside. The guard leading you in has a very dead expression on his face. Shall you begin in your time with your prisoner tonight, or shall we prepare a cell for her?
Perhaps a cell.
As you say, my lord. And he walks further down into one of these cells, opening it up with one of the keys. You see there is already what looks like a desiccated corpse, huddled up in the corner, shriveled. You think that's where a lot of the stench is perhaps coming from.
Can I get one at least a little cleaner?
He looks around, looking at you and then looking around. I reckon this is one of the cleaner ones, sir.
Then can something be done about the corpse?
He kind of sighs. I suppose so.
Good.
And he'll go in and drag the mat which carries this huddled form out. You can see it's barely more than bones. And he drags it out into the hallway between the cells. There you are, sir. Nice and clean.
Appreciated.
And the two men holding this covered up wind of cloth, holding Amelia, look to you uncertainly.
He'll nod to them and set her down.
They nod and bring in Amelia, setting her down gently. You can see there's a few puddles of muck and unknown fluids in here. It's almost impossible for her to not to be interacting with some of it when they lay her down. The expression of terror still frozen on her face.
Robert's just frowning during this whole ordeal.
And they leave the cell and close it behind them. And this guard locks up the cell door, looking at her impassively. Will there be anything else, my lord?
For now. No.
He nods and walks past you at a slow and almost bored pace. He takes slow, wide steps. He's a fairly heavy-set man. He seems uninterested in most of this. What's going through Robert's mind now?
He is not pleased at all that Amelia had to go through this. But he is relenting, and he's more interested in finding if any princes have arrived yet. Or any other staff.
All right. So what does Robert do next?
What would it take to get to the council's chambers from here?
Not much, since you've already been there before, leaving the dungeon, leaving the castle. The old Sarum Cathedral is really nothing more than a half-stripped dilapidation that's left to sit on its own on this high, windy hill above the town, and it seems always visible as this ominous eyesore. It wouldn't be much for you to leave town and go up the hill towards one of the ways that you came in or out.
In that case, it's probably wise to feed after expending so much vitae.
All right. How do you wish to feed?
Is the town large tavern?
Taverns it does have in a good supply.
And as per the standard, he'll head to a tavern and seek company there.
All right. I'll take charisma, empathy from you. Difficulty 6. You find a lot of success when you return to the town outside and you go to this tavern, try to push the image of Amelia out of your mind as you laugh and cajole with these men and women, and much as you have done in many nights past, you find 4 willing participants that you could feed on at some point in this next hour.
All right. In that case, he'll take about 1 blood point each.
All right, easy enough to do. You're charming enough. So now that you've fed, what are Robert's next plans?
I don't remember if I made any mention of it, but I wanted Robert to take the book with him. Because if I'm thinking correctly, this is the same location I could meet Anef, Nemtet, or whatever.
Yes.
Then Robert would seek him out, assuming no one more pressing is there in regards to Amelia.
Okay. You return to the chamber that you met your fellow Gauntlet members and the 7 Princes of the Covenant in Anaf-Nemtet. You're quite alone for some time, and just as you think that you're not going to find anyone here and you're starting to turn to leave, one of these many entrances that lead to this chamber, you see a familiar face. You see Anaf-Nemtet, this Moorish man dressed in very foreign clothes, simple conservative attire. He smiles and bows at the waist when he sees you.
Robert smiles and gives him a polite nod. Just the one I was looking for.
I sensed perhaps that there was someone here who was looking for me. What can I do for you, Robert de Vere?
Perhaps you can help me. I've stumbled upon a very odd book under even odder circumstances. I cannot make anything of its language, but perhaps you know what it is.
He furrows his eyebrows in confusion. Very well.
I suspect this book is something that should be destroyed, but it would do much to comfort my curiosity as to what it is. And Robert will go through his belongings and pull out the book.
You pull out the cloth wrapping that you had previously been holding this tome in and withdraw it.
And he'll present it to Anaf-Nemtet, looking expectantly.
He takes a few steps forward to look at it. He narrows his eyes when he sees it. And then he looks back to you. He'll withdraw from within his own small jacket a piece of cloth and very carefully move to open the front. And you see he's very careful about not touching this book as he flips through the pages using only the cloth between his fingers.
Robert's taking notes as he does this.
Why are you avoiding contact with it?
Please, why don't you set that down? It is a very dangerous tome you have.
Yes, I felt something wrong with it as well. Perhaps none of the others, but I am sensitive to it in some way.
He nods. I do know this book, by description and the order it breathes. This book goes by more than one name. The one that is most familiar is Solomon's Key. Where did you find this?
A bookstore in London. And although I suspect whoever owned the bookstore is at least wasn't running it, and someone took up residence in it.
And very likely did not know what they have. It is said this tome is what the ancient King Solomon used almost 1,000 years ago, before your Christ, to summon and command 72 demons to bring him wealth and power. And he gestures to the pages, still not touching the pages. These appear to be entries. Efforts made by someone in raising the first of the 72. It states he was successful based on the last pages, but there is no account of what happened after.
Indeed. This is quite troubling. Do you believe the word's true?
In my many lifetimes, I have rarely encountered anything quite as disconcerting to be around as this. It has a palpable atmosphere around it. Be very careful who you may show this to. Avoid touching it directly whenever possible. And never speak the name of this first one aloud.
I will heed this warning. Does it contain anything that would warrant its destruction?
It depends on who you ask. There is a pattern of destiny about this book, which taints those who would attend to it. I suspect following the instructions presented here would reveal secrets not meant for the living or the dead.
It has instructions within.
The ones followed, yes. Including this name. Simply possessing it may draw agents of darkness to you. There are many fools in this world who would see nations burned for the words inside.
Very well. And it said there was a success in one of them. Does this mean there's a demon among us?
If you would believe the words in there, whoever wrote this successfully summoned the first one and gained control. But if he did, it would beg the question, why not record all the wealth and power with which he gained? Or why not record the other 71?
Is there any mention of a name, the author? The one who summoned it?
He shakes his head. If the legend is true, perhaps it is King Solomon himself.
I see. Thank you for granting me use of your knowledge.
What, pray tell, will you do with this?
It may be more trouble than it's worth. Perhaps it could be analyzed to the fate of it, but other than that, I do not see any use for it.
Nor I, except perhaps to use that name to destroy whatever was released.
What is this you speak of?
He opens his mouth and then kind of frowns. Then he looks around for a moment and seems to spot something and gestures for you to follow as he walks over towards one of the hallways that lead to this chamber.
Robert tilts his head curiously and follows.
He leads you over to an area where the stone breaks and there is some dirt that seems to be exposed through the stone. And he crouches down, and with his finger he starts to make lines in the dirt. And you realize he's spelling something out. I will not speak this name aloud, but recognizing it may be important for you if you do intend to do anything with this. And finally he finishes and stands up, stepping away. And you see a name written with letters you actually recognize, and phonetically it seems to spell out Abalam. With creatures like the one described, they have abilities to sense, to connect. It is difficult to explain in this language. They are like waypoints. These things they can detect from who knows how far away. When they are summoned by either name, things of importance, places, they act as kinds of keys, drawing them out. They are significant. And so touching the tome, saying the name, these are things which may draw its attention, if it is indeed still on this plane. Be very careful with how you proceed.
And Robert grimly nods.
I would recommend you destroy it, though if it is as old as I suspect, I would question why time has not done that.
Could that be a sign whatever creature could be in this world is preserving it?
These things, they have a way of tainting all that they relate to. The places, the names, the objects of significance. Changing them. Perhaps this was once a book, a simple collection of vellum and pages, but you and I can both sense something is different about it. And he nods to you.
Good, good. Well, this is quite concerning. And I pray that this creature is not among us, but I will keep in mind this weapon which could destroy it.
He nods grimly, looking at the tome. I pity you for finding it.
Such a thing. It would have been better if it was never found.
I quite agree, but there is evil in this world which is persistent beyond many who would see it shut away. I wish I could help you more in this task, but I will not involve myself anymore with this thing.
I completely understand. Thank you for the warning you've given me.
He nods again to you, trying to force a smile. I am quite attuned to this place after my years. Should you need my aid or advice, I am always pleased to speak with your kind. You may find me here in the future nights.
Robert's ears perk up when he says you're kind. Does enough Nemtet not seem like
Canite?
Make a perception awareness roll. Standard difficulty. You can use aspects on this.
Was I told? I just completely blanked that out.
Perception alert, or perception awareness, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Three successes. You have a strong sense coming from enough Nemtet that he is certainly supernatural. There's something about him which marks him as different than the kind you've met many times. But he doesn't have the cold, pale aura. He doesn't have this atmosphere of death which you are so accustomed to dealing with when speaking to your kind. And he has a vigor, a life to him. But there's something more to him, but you don't think it's vampiric.
Yes, a pleasure. Though, I'm not sure if I'm certain what you are.
I am returned.
Arwa just blinks blankly at that.
There are others like me, but we do not often interact with your kind. And generally it is not favorable when we do. There was a group of us, more organized, far from here in the east. But I had a disagreement with their organization. I am something of an outcast.
I don't suppose this group is the type to be hunting you.
No. He smiles, actually. You think he might have been about to laugh. No, it is difficult to explain. I have spent enough time among Canaanites. He seems to force that word out. Many of you are hunting and chasing each other across the world. Those who I come from are not of that nature. And even if we did, there was no point. Death means little to us.
Well, that certainly is a relief.
It has freed me to study as I please. In that way, I am blessed. I choose to study the Canaanite condition. It is very interesting to me.
Truly. What have you discovered?
That your kind would be far more productive if you stopped destroying yourselves.
I can't say would disagree with those words. Though perhaps something could be said about too many of us.
A question I have pondered myself. There is a strange parallel between the way you must continue to exist and the way in which so many of you seek higher status at the expense of others, only to one night be at the prey of yet another, an endless cycle of rising and falling.
Indeed.
That is why I was most interested in this group. And he kind of looks up around at the chamber. It is one of the only successful conglomerations of your kind of this size which seems to have any stability.
What do you think is what holds them together?
Fear.
Robert nods slowly at this.
But will it be enough to keep them together? It has for the past century, but what about the next?
I suppose that remains to be seen.
He kind of smiles and sighs. Yes. We shall see. If you do mean to include another in that investigation, be careful in who you select. Looking down at the tome again.
This name.
Do not speak it aloud.
I will not. If someone else read this tome, you said there's individuals out there that would be willing to burn cities for it.
I have met those individuals.
Of your kind.
No. Some mortal, some of your kind, some of a different type. These things have a way of luring souls to them, of the supernatural and the natural.
I see. I shall keep this a well-guarded secret, then.
Good. He nods once.
With that, Robert will begin bundling the book back up and bid his final farewells to Nafnemtet.
And he smiles and bows at the waist to you again. And you think perhaps to look back one more time, and it's just a moment later and he seems to have been gone entirely. Where will Robert go now?
Suppose secure lodgings, or were there any pointed out inside the castle?
You know that the castle is open to you. You also know from previous instruction from the Covenant that there is a manor here, which was given to the previous gauntlet, but only infrequently used. So infrequently that you found a homeless man squatting there. Although, to be fair, it was a couple months after the gauntlet died. So you have a couple options.
I'm certainly familiar with that one. He'll get his men together and wait there.
At the manor?
Mm-hmm.
Alright. So the scene ends on closing out, watching Robert DeVere walk back down one of these dark pathways out of the Chamber of the Covenant, away from Anafnamtet and carrying his tome. We will change scenes. We return to the remaining gauntlet, Cormac, Elined, and Long Tom as they are entering Chestershire, drawing up on the city of Chester itself. Chestershire, the county, is mostly comprised of grassy hills and knolls, sparse woods, long stretches of area dominated by this reddish sandstone and several notable quarries. The city of Chester itself is at the end of a long ridge of elevated sandstone. To the north and east of the city are heathland with open, low-growing, woody vegetation and shrubs and forests. And to the west are the marshlands and the Dee estuary, which leads into the waters that become the Irish Sea. Although it's common knowledge among locals like the Welsh that the silting of the Dee estuary is making it harder and harder for ships to reach the Chester docks. Subsequently, the Liverpool ports are being leaned on heavily for marine trade. The city of Chester has strong walls built on Roman foundations that run 2 miles around the city, and because of the sandstone in the area, all major stonework, the walls, the cathedrals of both Chester and Liverpool, and even Chester Castle are all constructed from this very distinctive red stone, not really seen elsewhere in British Isles. Chester Castle, bearing this reddish stone, sits in the southwest corner of the town, providing significant defense and refuge. There's also a Benedictine abbey here, known as St. Werbo, and this is a quite influential abbey operating out of the Red Cathedral. The earldom of Chester, during this time, is acquired in conjunction with the title Prince of Wales, which goes to the heir apparent of the English throne. In this case, King Henry VI's only son, Edward of Westminster, is the Earl of Chester, and he is only a year old. The land has long been fought over for its strategic location and its importance for farming and leatherworking. So you're arriving tonight, making your way into the city of Chester. And as you make your way inside the gates, the mercenary captain meets up with the group of you to collect on debts, and unless there's anything else, they seem to disperse to the taverns, done with their commitment to escort you here. And so the 3 of you, plus Gertrude, have your carriage. You are just inside the walls of Chester, and it's relatively early in the evening. What do the group of you mean to do? We'll start with Cormac.
Cormac is excited to have finally arrived after such a long journey. And he himself has the idea to go to the tavern, or one of them anyway, and will say as much to his 2 companions.
I think, well, I had a thought and I'm going to leave it be. Thomas will pause a moment before anyone meanders off too far. Perhaps Gertrude would be so kind as to arrange lodgings suitable for the 4 of us.
And Gertrude looks over to you and over to Elined to verify that's what her plans are.
She'll look over to her and say, yes, that is something we will need to look into.
Of course, my lady. I will see about making arrangements if I'm provided some coin. to pay for the lodgings.
Of course, and she will provide, well, I'll roll resources to see if I can provide the coin for that.
And the group of you are hearing this discussion. Anybody who wants to can contribute to this. I'll take a resources roll, standard difficulty. I'll need 3 successes from either Elined or the crew to pay for lodgings for all of you and to stow your carriage. You're coming up just short of what you think as a group you would need for all of your stuff to be stowed, which makes sense since you just paid off these mercenaries and none of you are local to the area. So you're a little bit light.
I thought ones didn't count against us.
Oh. Did I say that in the... Is that what I wrote down?
That's what I'm looking at, but
Okay. I
it's
saw
your
the
house
rules.
rule. Like, it's your house rule. You can call it how you want to.
No, I just saw the F1s. So I will say, yes, you do have enough. So you can roll that without the...
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, so actually that being the case, you do have enough. Not a huge amount, but certainly enough to cover the cost that you think for putting up your horse, your carriage, to have your stuff stowed away, and for lodgings for all 3 of you. And Gertrude takes the coin and sets about to the nearest inn, which you can see is actually pretty close to the gate you came into. Strategically located for travelers looking for a place to lodge. Is their horse accounted for? Did Bolt come with you?
He did.
Okay. So Elined's gonna take the reins and also lead Bolt over in that direction.
Gertrude?
Yes.
Am?
I mean Gertrude, not Elined. Leaving the 3 of you alone in the street.
Take care with him. He doesn't like dark places. He says to Gertrude as she leads him away.
She kind of waves, out of earshot, but waves back to you.
Now, where did you say your poetry lover haunted?
I was told that he is a Rothschild. However, that is all I have to go off of, is the name.
I'll take an intelligence politics roll from everyone. Standard. Even if you haven't spent much time in Chester, it's not a huge secret to your kind, to Canaanites, where you can find the court. Okay, so Cormac, Thomas, and waiting on a roll for Elined. All of you have the idea, at least last you heard, you recall that Barbaros is supposed to have court, at least some of the time, in the Chester Castle, the Great Hall there. Whether or not he's having it now, tonight, who can say? But you think you heard that once before. You don't know if that's where this Rothschild would be, but it's at least where maybe the nearest candidate might be.
Are we planning to just jump in with both feet then? Not even a moment to relax.
I like to know where I'm heading, both feet or not.
And if he is having court tonight, then if we do not take the opportunity, it will be possibly a while before it happens again.
Remember, though, Jean-Marc has already sent outriders. He'll have heard of us. And any details Jean-Marc chose to share.
We'll have to assume he chose to share all of them.
Quite so.
If he did indeed share all of them, then he would know the reason why we are here.
But we never told Jean-Marc why we were here. Smirks a bit.
Yes, we did tell him about a potential lead up here about certain enemies, or potential enemies, to the Gauntlet and to the
Yes.
Covenant as a whole.
But he believes we're... Well, excuse me, he was never told we were coming to Chester.
I did tell him that, and I could have sworn you were in the room for that.
Oh. I was rather hoping to keep that under wraps. The best laid plans of mice and men and canines, I guess.
Well, regardless of whether Barbaros knows or not, I should be completely forthcoming with you. We're not on the best of terms.
Is there any particular reason as to why?
Because the bastard took his steaming shite on my homeland, that's why.
Ooh. Fair
When I
enough.
asked for aid, he denied it. Of course, it is possible he did not even give me a second thought. However, let's say that I'm not on the best terms with him. I hate him sight unseen. Just thought you'd like to know.
No. At least we haven't really changed his position on us too much.
That we know of, at least.
And then if there's to be no merrymaking, we should be on our way to the castle.
At the very least, it will make mingling in the populace a little bit easier. He won't be suddenly surprised by our presence due to an announcement from the sheriff. dragging us all before him.
Precisely.
Details. I think we saw the place on the way in, didn't we?
Hard to miss. It's almost like he's compensating for something.
Cormac chuckles at that.
Aren't most castles and manors compensating for something?
You should know better than anyone their true purpose.
Yes, I'm aware. Fortresses.
All the same, the size, yes.
The gaudiness.
Let them design it how they will, so long as it's defensible, it serves its purpose.
If you say so. He'll gesture for them to lead on.
Elined will lead the way.
Cormac following shortly after.
Alright. As the group of you make your way toward Chester Castle, the red sandstone prominent on the walls around you, certainly giving you a memorable feel for this place. And soon enough, you make your way through the streets towards the castle. It takes you some time speaking to guards. You show your ring eventually, or it's recognized, and you seem to be expected or understood that people by your description bearing what you have are allowed into the castle. Otherwise you would have been stopped long before you made it outside. The castle, Chester Castle, is a moat and bailey with a square stone tower known as the Flag Tower. There is a stone gateway which you pass through, Agricola Tower, and you see that there seems to be a single great keep of sandstone, red sandstone, that dominates. You pass over a moat and bailey as you make your way in, and finally you're escorted inside to the interior, to the Great Hall. And the great wooden doors close behind you by the guards who escorted you in. And you can see, once you're inside, further down the hall, you hear raised voices towards the end where you can see a number of people are discussing something, one of them being quite animated. There seems to be quite a collection of people here, actually, at the end of this great hall. There are many stone columns which hold up the 2 stories of this hall. It's a fairly impressive design, and large banners of triplicate golden lions arranged vertically on a red background hang magnanimously on the walls for all to see, impossible to miss. Right now you're still at the entrance, a little bit farther than this group is gathered, speaking.
Do we recognize any of them?
You think you recognize some of them. You have to step a little bit closer to identify some of them, because you're still at the doorway and they're at the end of the Great Hall.
Serious faces now.
Thomas nods a bit, but he'll also boom out in his best announcing voice. Hail the hall.
And a number of people turn to look at you. This discussion pauses. You hear a voice from a man you don't recognize, and he seems to be towards the end, calling towards you. He's all in black, kind of a fine black tunic. Hail! Come! And he seems to usher you over. There are no mortal guards kind of standing idly by that you notice, as is usually common in a lot of these castles. Except for the ones that were just outside this door.
As they're called over, Elined will head that way.
Cormac as well, his hands clenched behind his back.
Thomas will bring up the rear, and his hands are also folded at his back, but they're not clenched. It's quite a relaxed thing.
Alright. As you draw close, you're better at identifying who this collection is. Several catch your interest. The man who called you over and seems to be standing facing this group of soldiers, which is present but is involved in some kind of discussion. This man who called you over, he seems to be in his early 40s with short black hair and a clean-shaven face. He's a fine black tunic and black hose and a very fine gold chain around his neck. You also see near him is a man of about the same age with short red facial hair, a naked saber, unsheathed but strapped to his side, and he seems dressed more like a lightly clad soldier of some kind or a ranger. He seems to have this long jacket and leather breeches on. And lastly, observing this kind of main discussion going on, in the far corner is a creature huddled together into itself with a very shriveled feature. It seems to have the visage of an old withered man with long thin gray hair coming from his scalp, and he's kind of messing with his hair, pulling bits of it out as he watches. Front and center, which seems to be observed by these few others foremost, is this group of 5 soldiers clad in chainmail and gamisons. They're standing in formation, holding their helmets grouped up together. Their swords are sheathed at their sides, but they each bear heater shields with the same heraldry as you're seeing along these walls, this triplicate of gold lions. The 5th man at the head he turns back to what you see as Prince Barbaros. He turns back to Barbaros and hands him a small patch of cloth. You see that Prince Barbaros is in a long, dark crimson robe on this dais. They seem to have returned to their discussion after your coming in. Barbaros hisses when he looks at this cloth. Of course it was her. Of course you would choose now of all times to pick at me. Go. Ride out. Patrol the roads for any more.
Can I see the cloth being handled at all?
You can make a perception alertness difficulty 8. It's difficult to see past all these men and him holding it. Thomas and Cormac do not see what he's holding. Is Elined trying to see this, or?
No, she does not know much about the such embroidery type things, so she'd rather not.
Alright. So no, Cormac and Thomas, you try to see what was just passed over to him, but you're not able to see anything besides this. Some kind of cloth. Maybe a badge. And this front knight who handed it to him, he salutes, beating his left breast briefly before turning back. And he and his men turn to face you. Just because they're turning to leave, they don their helmets and continue on past you. The clanking of metal becomes louder as they pass by and move out. Ah, the gauntlet is here. With better news than perhaps I just received. Come forward.
Cormac moves forward.
Elined does so with an oh-so-polite smile, and upon approaching, does a full formal curtsy, as is custom.
I will take an appearance etiquette from each of you.
Div 6.
Difficulty 6, but it might be different for some of you, because some of you did not do so well at the first presentation.
Yeah, Elined had that. Well, hold on, I have it written down my notes somewhere. It was either a double or triple botch or something like that.
And Cormac really does not like him, so it might not do well for him either.
I'll make it difficulty 7 for Elined and Cormac for different reasons.
That makes sense.
If that makes sense. And Elined. Alright. Despite being a little bit shaken from what you knew was not an excellent performance the first time, you recover a little bit in how you dignify yourself before Prince Barbaros. Cormac, unfortunately, you're having a time of it trying to pay the respect to this man who was willing to let Dublin burn and not do anything about it, even when you requested it.
Sorry. He does not even bow, and yes, his stance is a bit stiff.
Thomas, you seem to be paying all the respects due necessary.
Well met, Your Grace.
I'd heard you might be heading this way. I'd also heard some disconcerting reports about some lead which you failed to follow up on or alert anyone about.
Yes, and as I had feared, as I told Jean-Marc after the fact, once he became aware of perceived lead. He sent a great deal of his forces to pursue it. I worry that he may have overreacted.
It is not your job to worry about the emotional state of the princes.
As Jean-Marc pointed out, it is my job to preserve and protect the Covenant. I would not be doing that job if I provided incomplete information that resulted in a misstep by those that I serve.
I'm sure you gave all your excuses to Jean-Marc himself in person. I'll spare you the time of repeating them here. What is the nature of your visit in my city?
Elena glances around. Is there anyone who can overhear us?
Yes, all the people I described before. The soldiers, the 5 knights he was meeting with, they're gone. But the other 3, they're all within hearing distance of this entire discussion. They're very close.
This topic is of a rather sensitive nature.
Suffice
May we speak with you, without as many ears around?
He looks from you over to this man with the short red facial hair beside him, and then to the corner where this old, scraggly man seems to be crouched around. And they seem to take the hint. The man with the red facial hair, I'll take a perception and empathy from everyone to gauge his reaction. Cormac, you definitely see the look of disappointment on this man before he turns to leave. Thomas and Elined, you get a bit more. You get a sense that he's very disappointed, but also a bit irritated. And you catch, just for the briefest moment, his eyes go towards the man in black, the man in this black tunic, with a hint of resentment. This is very brief, but you catch it, the two of you. And he leaves, along with this old man, but the man in the black tunic and gold chain stands as Prince Barbaro speaks up again. Magister Tradian Swift stays. Whatever you can speak to me about, you may speak in front of my Magister.
Very well. In one of my outings in London, I was informed by someone who was rather adamant about not being fully seen that there could be potential enemies within the city of London. His informant, his ally, who may know more, is in this city. It was a matter he would rather not discuss within the confines there for his own reasons.
He narrows his eyes at you. You say there are enemies in London, and this stranger...
It is something that the stranger had brought up. However, we do not know if it is true or false yet. They specifically mentioned wishing to see the Gauntlet fail in their tasks. Now, to what extent they wish to see that, that is up for debate, as I have little information on these supposed enemies.
It's disconcerting. They sent you
It
here
is.
because of some contact?
I was told that I could speak with someone here, a contact he had here that could give me more information.
It's very alarming news, especially considering I have not the faintest idea what he might be speaking of. If this is some would-be ally, why not bring it to Prince Ambrose? Why am I not aware of this ally? I know not of whom you speak.
I know not of the man who hid himself either. He made himself quite scarce after the event was over.
Perhaps deception. Perhaps disinformation. Have you considered that?
I have considered that, but isn't it better to investigate and be certain?
He nods after a moment reluctantly. Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, nothing. Never mind.
Well, I don't know who you're looking for here.
I have a name, and I also know that they have according to the person in London, they have a fondness for poetry.
That means nothing to me. Give me the name.
I believe they referred to him as Rothschild.
Rothschild. I just sent him away.
My apologies, sir. I was not aware of who was in the room.
The prior. He nods. Strange and concerning to me that he would not speak of something, given that he is my sheriff.
Priors do have their reasons for doing certain things. I wonder if we might go into the hall and speak with him.
Bring him forth. I would hear what he has to say. No more talks behind closed doors.
As you wish.
And he stands there folding his arms, waiting expectantly.
Does he wish us to fish the prior, or we'll fetch the prior, or...
It seems like he expects you to go out and look for him.
Very well, she will go out and do so.
Alright. You make your way out of the wooden double doors, and you don't immediately see anyone. There are the guards, of course, standing by. And then you see a little bit ways down the path. You do see this man, you think it's a man. He's somewhat obscured by some of the foliage. You think this is Rothschild, but he seems to be making himself a bit more discreet as he watches the double doors.
Alright, you will head on over. Is it, in fact, the same man as before?
Yes, when you get closer, you do see his face is horribly scarred to the point that you think it's almost a little bit hard to look at him.
Oh, well, she pauses for a moment, then regains her polite smile, and produces that poem that she and Robert worked on, and handed over to him. Said, I believe a friend of yours mentioned that you were quite fond of this type of thing.
And he takes it from you slowly in his gnarled hands, looking at it. Very good. I rather this.
Thank you, but I am hardly the only one who can take credit. It was a collaboration effort.
Are you, wont to hand strangers poetry?
No. I just figured it would be polite, considering your friend was rather kind enough to mention it. But the primary matter of coming out here, we were sent to retrieve you.
Which friend said I like poetry?
He did not give a name. He mainly stuck the shadows and gave a bit of an ominous warning.
What was the warning?
We best discuss it inside when we are before the prince again.
This is important. It may
Yes.
determine whether I go back inside or not. What did he warn you of?
That there are potential enemies within London proper.
And he told you to give me poetry?
She just smiles. Well, he said that you liked poetry and that you might potentially know something. Not that you were involved, that you have other information.
He looks down at the poem, this paper you handed him, and kind of puts his finger on a few of the letters, almost caressing it. You never found me out here. I was gone. It's unfortunate that I was already gone by the time you came out. But when you do leave, you'll come out away from the guard, away from here. And I will find you. Because you did not find me when you came out. Understand?
Yes.
And he pockets the poem as he takes a few steps back. And he turns a corner, disappearing behind a stone wall.
She glances over at Thomas. Well,
Oh, I thought you
you
went out by
said
yourself.
you wanted a private meeting.
I
Yeah, I
thought
thought you
by
went out there by yourself.
Oh, did I?
I didn't hear
Oh,
anybody
I
else follow
thought they
you.
followed me. Okay, they didn't follow me.
We're just
Got it.
waiting inside.
Yeah, everyone else is inside. You're outside.
Alright. She will come back in and return to the prince. It is unfortunate, but I could not find him. I should do a more thorough search around outside to try to locate him, though I am not certain as to where he usually resides.
Ah, damn.
My apologies.
Could be anywhere now. Maybe not.
I will do
before
my
soon.
best to find him.
When you do bring him before me, I wish to hear why he has some connection to some shadowy ally, which apparently neither I nor Ambrose have heard of before.
Haven't heard of before. I simply assumed he was a prior who was very adamant about not being seen.
Many of them are.
It leads me to great suspicion. This prior having some information and not sharing it.
It is, and it is possible that this might be a wild goose chase.
But then the
However,
priors,
I believe it is rather better to be safe than sorry.
then again, the priors are known for playing it very close to the vest.
He's a sheriff in my city. He should be playing it close to my vest.
Perhaps he believes that he is protecting you.
Let us hope he has some kind of wonderful explanation for his innocence when you do find him.
Yes.
Will there be anything else tonight?
No, that was it.
If I am not here when you bring him forth, my gods will detain him until I return.
Very well.
The man beside him in this black tunic and gold chain looks very grim, seeming to parallel Barbarossa's expressions.
Thomas will bow and begin to back away.
Elined will do one final courtesy and politely excuse herself.
Cormac merely nods his head, half politely, and turns to leave with them.
You get something of a glare from Barbarossa, but he doesn't say anything.
He just grins.
The three of you make your way out of the Great Hall, back into this outside opening, still in the interior of the inner wall, but along this path that has some access to foliage, a little bit of greenery.
Before they're too far away, she will speak up, say, I'm aware you may have some criticisms of being that forward, but each time we haven't been, it seems to have bitten us in the past.
And this time it's bitten someone else.
Yes, but it not being us is helpful.
Thomas
then.
looks very nonplussed at that particular statement. To what
then.
lengths would you go for self-preservation?
Now that is quite the question. See, I am very fond of not turning into not ending this existence very soon. But that is not the matter at hand. And she will continue along the way to where she's supposed to be.
And how many Amelias would you sacrifice?
Yes. Her.
Yes. Her.
Well, it depends. It ultimately depends if every single one of them was attached to the same issue.
Is she? She's an innocent. This
She's
Rob,
a witness.
who's like to die because a cancer has wrought itself into this covenant.
Now, careful what you say. Someone might overhear.
And now a potential ally has to fear for his own life.
What exactly are we discussing here? I thought we were looking for a prior.
Yes.
We are.
Let's be about that.
Yes, judgments on character aside.
So the group of you continue on, making your way out of the inner wall and beyond the outer wall, back into the streets. Not as busy as London or even Lincoln for that matter. There are people here and there, but mostly you see guards. Not many, but you're able to walk the streets mostly uninterrupted. And as you're continuing down, you hear a call from off to the side. There's a gathering of boxes and bags of perhaps grain, and you see a figure kind of poke his head out as he calls out, "Over here. Quickly."
She'll head over.
Cormac as well, looking confused.
Thomas also.
You come around to the other side of the boxes and see this man, whom has been identified by Barbros as Rothschild, this prior contact you were supposed to look for. He seems to have fear in his eyes, looking at the group of you. There's no certainty that we have privacy, so we will have to, you'll have to follow me. He's looking at each of you very quickly, very cautiously.
Alright, are they in a shadowy area?
Yes.
After moving further into the shadows, let me see. Apologies, I'm looking up. Yep, level 1 obtenebration. I can strengthen the shadows to help improve our stealth. I intend to do that.
All right.
Once we are free of any witnesses that I notice, at the very least.
Yeah, coming down this alleyway, the streets weren't that busy to begin with, so it's not that difficult to find some privacy. So you're doing Silence of Death, or what are you doing? Unseen Presence? No, wait, that's Obfuscate, not Attenebration. Never mind.
Yeah, Tenebration. Level 1 lets me improve my own stealth. And I can alter shadows around us, so... If I alter those shadows, can I make it so it's more difficult to notice us as we're traveling down? Or would that be more...
It's a kind of thing where if you're moving down the street, it's a little bit more awkward, because if someone does see you, they're going to notice the strange shadows about you, and it'd be a lot more...
I was under the assumption we were in an alleyway.
Yeah, if you're in an alleyway right now.
So long as the shadows prove beneficial for us. If we're going out in the open, that's not necessarily something she's got to do out in the open.
Right. So yeah, you can spend a blood point to gain extra stealth die. Is that really all it is? That's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is sad. It also mentions that I can also manipulate the shadows subtly, so I was trying to stretch it to see if I could try to hide other people with it.
That's fine.
At least minorly.
Yeah. Not huge, but it helps a little bit, especially while you're moving through these alleyways. The casual onlooker may not notice you as readily, looking out their window or such. And indeed, Rothschild does lead you further into the alleyways, and you move behind a few buildings as it seems like he's taking you towards the edge of town. And once you're past all these houses, you realize you're at the wall of Chester, and he shows you this kind of narrow passage in between a house going into the wall, and you end up kind of sliding between some cracks through a very narrow hole in the wall that you kind of have to half crawl through as he leads you outside of Chester and to the edge of the estuary, where you can see some of the water coming up. And he's always looking around. He's looking constantly. There are some docks that are still present, although no boats have really made it, because the water isn't deep enough. So although there are docks, there's not really a whole lot of activity out here. Does anyone stop him or do anything while he leads you through this long, winding path through the city? Take that as a no.
No.
Finally, when he reaches the water of the docks, he's looking, very concerned, very cautious. Yes, it should be around here somewhere. Yes, here it is. And he kind of runs his hand through some of the watery, muddy dirt where some of the water kind of reaches up. And he runs his hands through the dirt until it stops, and he picks up a buried rope, and he pulls at it to make it taut, and you can see a rope reveals itself coming a little bit out of the dirt. I hope the group of you doesn't mind getting a little bit wet. This is very important for privacy's sake. We'll be going under.
If that is truly necessary, then
It
I
is.
have some...
He cuts you off. It is truly necessary.
She glances at the others.
What the hell are we doing? I thought we were supposed to be going back to the prince.
We're going for a swim.
And he looks around as if looking at the space around you, as though there's some hidden person there. Trust me. And he begins to follow the rope into the water, holding on to it. I'd say close.
Okay. Alright. To hell with it, Elined will follow. Despite how crazy it seems.
This better be worth it.
Yes, it better. It'll cost at least me dearly. But he goes under.
All right. So the group of you follow this strange prior as he follows this rope, which he discovered on the sand, basically, into the water. You wade in as he continues to follow, and he's kind of crouching. He's already a strangely shaped man, but he's crouching even more as he moves quickly into the water, following this rope. And soon enough, your heads are submerged, and it is almost pitch black down here. There's no light shining down. You really only have the feel of the rope. And Elined, you can kind of feel Rothschild once in a while. He kind of holds your hand to make sure you're still there. You can't hear anything, you can't see anything. It's just continuing along, holding on to this rope as your dead bodies, luckily, are not very buoyant. So you follow the bed of the estuary, and you go on for a long ways. It feels like a quarter of a mile. There are some turns you notice when you reach wherever this rope is bolted down into, and you can feel the floor. You feel a tap from Rothschild, and he holds your hand and moves it to another rope that's bolted down, and you follow another one. Continuing along in this underwater journey without any sound but the waves, the water pressing upon your ears, and the pressure. And you continue along, continuing on, and finally you notice from feel alone in this darkness, you're ascending again. You're ascending some of the estuary, going higher up, closer to the surface of the water. Finally, you reach the surface of the water, and you can see there's a ceiling. You're not looking at the open sky as you pierce the surface of the water, following this rope and Rothschild. It looks like the ceiling's very low. It's very rocky and stony. It's some kind of cave, some very small cave. There is a single torch sitting just on the shore ahead. It looks like some kind of alcove where the water reaches up, where this stone formation seems to have naturally made some pocket where there is just space. You think at maybe a different tide, the water might change in elevation here, but for now there's space enough, and a single torch illuminates this tiny little alcove, this cave. And Rothschild kind of pulls at his hair and wrings his long, spindly gray hair, wringing out the water as he makes big wet thwaps as he steps up onto the surface. Thank you. Had to be sure that we wouldn't follow this. The only way I know.
Thomas is sure to pull up the collar of his coat around his face a bit, doing his best to cover the bare face that's left after the salt water washed away the wheat paste beard.
Yes, you are bereft of your beard. And hiding it is going to be exceptionally difficult.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
I will give you a wits. I don't even know what the roll would be for this.
Performance or subterfuge? Your call.
Performance. Wits performance. Difficulty 9 to hide that you no longer have a beard.
Can I use my shadow manipulation to try to help with that in any way, shape, or form?
You think to try and do that as Thomas is trying to obviously hide, and Thomas, in your very intentional efforts to make yourself less obvious, you hike up your collar just a little bit too much, and while you're looking down at it, you kind of trip a little bit, and while you're tripping, you trip into Rothschild as you're holding up your collar looking down. Huh. You, lost your beard.
Bloody hell.
I guess we all have secrets.
What will this one cost me to keep?
Perhaps you're in luck that I'm the one that find this out. I could care less about your, state. There are, perhaps more important, pressing matters which I threw you here for.
Yes, I agree. It's why I followed.
Yes, the more pressing matters.
Yeah, you see in this chamber there's a single torch, there's a couple empty boxes, and you see some dead rats as you're getting the lay of this very small space. And Rothschild takes a few steps and sits down on one of these empty crates. There isn't much room in here, but if you were sent by whom I believe, you will trust in the security here, and why I demand it. What have you heard thus far of the warnings towards the gauntlet?
I thought there is a group in London that wishes to see us fail. Though to what extent, if they wish to see us dead, is currently unknown.
Indeed. Perhaps one or others of you have already heard similar warnings that your failure is preferable to victory. Mind it not. The authors of your defeat would see you bled of your resolve before you have been tested.
Tested by whom?
Your covenant views itself as the preeminent force behind England, but there is another factor at work. Perhaps you have picked up on another influence.
The Worship Company of Mercers.
few different influences that we've run across.
And he turns to Elined and points, nodding. There's a small and quiet collection of us who believe one of these factors has infiltrated the country, working through both the Kine and Cainite alike to see England brought to its knees, and we fear it has eyes and ears in the courts of the Covenant, and are loath to speak of it openly. That is why I would not speak of this in front of Barbaros. And he looks to each of you for understanding.
Yes. Though it is something that it would be beneficial for him to know at some point.
Perhaps or perhaps not. That is to be seen. Are you aware of the feud between Ragnar and Barbaros?
No, but I know that Wulfric was quite, well, let's just say he wasn't fond of Ragnar.
Yeah.
And that is where my information on her ends.
There could be many reasons to dislike Prince Ragnar. The feud between herself and Prince Barbaros is believed to be over some qualm decades or centuries old. This is known among some of the courts. But over the past years, especially in the last century, incidents have sparked it further. More conflict, more skirmishes, more raids, legal trouble. We suspect some of it is from the emperors of their quietly smoldering hate for each other, but we suspect it's manufactured as well to grow. Something is nourishing that. This force. And he paces and then stops to look inside this box for any more rats and is sifting through them. Our suspicions were reinforced at the loss of the Battle of Castillon in 1453. By all accounts, General Talbot was considered a formidable commander, supported by the English Cainite veterans, including yourself. Attributed... What?
It was an act of sabotage. I have been quite vocal about that. Exactly who the perpetrator is, I don't know, but I wish to know so I can, well, let them know exactly what I think about them undermining my efforts.
It is known that you have Agincourt's victory under your name. We thought the decision to attack the fortified French cannons. At first we suspected you were among this force, poisoning his mind, but other evidence disputed this. Finally, with the destruction of the gauntlet, all up in ash all at once, we suspect they may have stumbled upon something which would unveil this factor assassinated for the discovery. And if that is true, your own lives are in grave danger, as you would be the next obvious tool of investigation, perhaps to unearth whatever they found.
We wouldn't be so lucky as to have stumbled upon someone who knows whether or not the Covenant itself ordered their destruction.
No theory may be excluded at this point, unfortunately. if one or several were participants. But there is something which may be of use to you. Through our efforts piecing together transactions and correspondences, we have deduced there is a contact that Gaetan had intended to meet. We think meeting for some kind of offer of business. It is verified this contact was known by Prince Jean-Marc. And he stops to appraise each of you. What's Cormac's reaction to this rambling?
He's just listening to it with a very bemused look on his face, shaking his head, not believing what he's hearing. Just so I have this straight, we are talking about the roving bands.
Roving bands?
Of Cainites who wish to undermine the Covenant.
Come now, we've seen more forces at hand than just them.
Then color me confused. What are we talking about?
I know not if these bands you speak of are related or not. I do know that Gaetan's right hand, Cornelius, he almost certainly knew of this contact if Jean-Marc did. And perhaps if this contact was the next destination for Gaetan had he survived that night, perhaps Jean-Marc or Cornelius would know how to find that contact. Perchance you've met with one or either of them?
With both.
Both.
And?
Cornelius is revealing very little beyond his initial statements. Jean-Marc will not have him questioned to any serious degree.
Now isn't that alarming? Why do you think that is?
Because he's hiding something.
I posited a question to Jean-Marc's grandchild before we left Lincoln. What would it take for Jean-Marc to kill someone as close to him as Gaetan?
Maybe Gaetan's contact knows, and maybe that's why he's hidden. Who can say? Except perhaps Jean-Marc himself or Cornelius. Alas, you could not get the answers from them when you were there.
Yes, that is a quite unfortunate matter.
But of course now you see why such discretion must be made, even with the princes themselves.
Because it's impossible to know which of them are complicit and which of them are simply pawns of a larger game.
Precisely.
And Thomas looks pointedly at Elined, almost as though there is a cancer wrought within the Covenant.
is less something I would refer to as a cancer, and more something I would refer to as sabotage.
Call it what you may, this force, it acts unchecked. And he nods. Should you find the opportunity to perhaps speak with Cornelius again, I would seize it. He may be the only one now, if Jean-Marc is indeed involved in some of this.
Yes, though we will have to be rather careful about how to go about it.
One of you said something about bringing me before Barbaros to speak, did you not?
Yes.
He asked that we fetch you.
He grimaces and paces, making large shadows on the wall with this one torch as the source of light. Worrisome. I am concerned for my well-being.
As am I. I had hoped we could meet with you without raising the alarm. My apologies in that.
I know not if I may still stay in this city. I have revealed much, and if Barbaros is seeking me, then I must flee.
If it would help, I for one will state publicly that our lead turned out to be all for naught, and you knew nothing of which we spoke.
If preferable, I would have you say you never found me.
As you say, and Thomas gestures to his face, and we will consider it an even trade.
He nods.
What exactly do you think you have to fear from Barbaros? If it is as you say, and Jean-Marc is the cancer we seek. Let us take you before him and just say you don't know anything.
My contacts in this collective have spoken to me of Jean-Marc's lengths and of that of Ambrose. The Covenant Princes, they are, one and all, determined to stamp this out. I fear they will go to measures extreme. I know not what Barbaros plans. Should I say I have no information?
I have some idea what he might have planned.
With that information, however, I must offer my apologies. I'm sure it was none of our intention to ruin your life.
Well, the fortune for me is that I can change my face as needed. On that note, you likely shall not see me again, though. If you visit York, I think I may find you. Perhaps in a different guise.
You've been a valuable asset, Rothschild.
He nods to you once, a grim look on his grizzled and scarred face, and he looks over to Elined. I greatly appreciate the poem, although it's quite gone now, I'm afraid. And he kind of feels at his drenched coat pocket. You sought me out once before. Should you find yourself in York, I'm sure you'll know how to find me again.
Yes, and I will make certain to have another poem ready to replace that one.
I rather liked that last verse there. It was quite clever.
Again, I am not the only one who can take credit for that.
Well, I'm going to make arrangements, see how far I can get in this one evening. I wish you safe travel, Lords of the Gods.
And you,
Yes, same to you.
when next we meet, I hope it is under happier circumstances.
Huh. Would that it would be. And he slowly moves towards the water, picking up at the rope to follow it down and submerge himself until he is out of sight. And the group of you are alone in this tiny, watery cave alcove and a single torch.
Besides the torch and the crate, what else is in here?
Literally nothing. It is
Just
You have to imagine that anything brought up here probably has to go through that water, so we didn't bring much up here to begin with.
well, it's literally just a crate full of rats.
Dead rats. Looks like they've been squeezed and pulverized. There's not much left of them. None of them are alive. The whole space is probably smaller than your study. It's very small.
Well, I suppose I shall cause a sensation then. I can't very well walk back into Chester looking like Thomas Chamberlain, or dressed as Thomas Chamberlain. And Thomas, Judith, has a seat and begins doffing her shoes and trousers. But a long coat is an inexpert replacement for a gown, I suppose.
Once we get back to town, I am rather decent at sewing. I could try to do something, but I am hardly a professional.
Judith chuckles a bit. That's sweet, but I did bring gowns.
Fair enough.
Alright. Do you all submerge or do you remain there?
Well, we need to get back before sunrise.
Oh, not necessarily. You're in a cave.
We are in a cave.
We are in a cave. However, what if someone comes in there during the daylight? What if our bodies are washed out during the day as well?
Are there any signs of a high water mark in here?
You think you're at maybe the high water mark, although it's unclear how much the tide changes. If anything, it probably goes down a little bit.
Judith is fairly well experienced with the sea. How close are we, would you say, to high tide?
You'd think it, if anything, it's probably high tide right now.
Bare-legged under her coat, putting her shoes back on, Judith will stand up. We can probably weather the night here. The tide will go out, not up. Or we can chance returning to town now. Either way.
If it is safer here, it is safer here. Though there might be some questions as to where we are between the officials and, well, my ghoul.
As luck would have it, there is one among us that they're not looking for.
Yes, as luck would have it.
And she'll wring out her hair a bit and fold down her collar. Though I'm sure that I look quite the trollop.
That might be in your favor.
She arches a brow a bit and smirks. Turn around, Cormac.
He grins, but does as bidden. Really, I don't think this is necessary.
The lady always leaves something to the imagination. But she'll shift things about and free up the bindings that are holding down her bosoms. Then refasten everything so that it's a little bit more apparent that this is in fact a lady. You can turn around again.
And he does so, looking her up and down. I don't see much improvement.
She narrows her eyes a little bit at him.
He waggles his eyebrows at her.
I leave the choice to you. We can stay, I can go, or we can all go.
How close to dawn is it?
Not very. It's probably 4 hours or so. 5 hours maybe.
We have more than enough time to return.
Then let's get out of this dank cavern.
Okay. Do the group of you go under then?
Just so.
Yep, head the way back.
Back to the carriage and the inn.
Yeah, back to whatever Gertrude's found us anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the scene ends, fading on the group of you, submerging back into the water, following the rope. And as the scene ends, we will close out the session It's about 9 o'clock, and we will pick it up again next week. Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. Good game. Except I feel like a doofus for not recording Robert's scene.
Oh.
Yeah. That was dumb. In the grand scheme of things, there are worse scenes that I could not record, but I don't like not doing that anyway. But still, good roleplay, good game tonight. We will do 2 experience all around and do some entertaining role player votes. We'll start with Cormac.
He didn't get much time, but I'm definitely going to give it to Robert tonight. Just because what we did get from him had me laughing, rolling on the floor.
Cool. And Robert.
I'll give it to Elined today. Had much more talking from her, and I enjoyed the.
It's true. She's been a real chatterbox. And Elined.
I'll give that to Robert, if only because I find it funny that scene with the man with the axe. I'm going to run away, and now I'm going. Wait a minute, no, I'm going to talk.
Yeah, it worked out in his favor.
Yeah,
Yeah, it did.
Hindu words could do something.
It's almost like a life lesson. And Thomas.
I think I'll give it to Elined as well. She was quite chatty. And while I disagree with her motivations, at least she had some sound thought behind them.
Yeah, I like that we're getting a little bit more out of Elined. I think that's fun. Fun to hear. Cool. So that's an even split. 2 to Robert, 2 to Elined, and then 2 experience all around. So we will pick it up again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Cool.
Good night.
Cool. Good game. Good night. See you guys later.